You know what's wild? There's this bike buried in Yamaha's back catalog that most folks under 30 probably couldn't pick out of a lineup if their life depended on it. But say the name, just whisper it to anyone who threw a leg over one back in the late 80s, man, their whole face just changes. The FJ1200, the machine that essentially drew the blueprint for the modern sport tourer, back when that term wasn't even part of the motorcycling lexicon. And now, for 2026, Yamaha's gone and yanked it out of mothballs. Now hold on, I know what you're thinking. Oh great, another retro cash-in. But hear me out, because what they've actually done here is, well, it's kind of bizarre, honestly. They didn't just dust off a badge and glue it onto some generic commuter. Now, they dove back into the crates, studied the hell out of what gave the original its magic, and then built something that genuinely feels like it time-warped straight past 3 decades of motorcycle evolution, landing exactly, almost eerily, where it needed to land. By the time we're done here, you'll get why this might be the sleeper hit of the year. And there's one twist about how Yamaha's playing this whole game that absolutely no one saw coming. Let's pump the brakes for a second though, because you really do need the context. 1984, Yamaha drops the FJ1100. A couple years later, they punch it out to 1188cc, fiddle with the frame, and boom, the FJ1200 is born. And this thing just kept going, all the way from 86 to 96, doing something most bikes back then didn't even dare to attempt. You could throw your gear on, hammer out 1,000 miles in a day, and your back wouldn't hate you. But then, find a twisty stretch of tarmac, and if you had even half a clue what you were doing, you'd leave pure sport bikes scratching their fairings in confusion. That unicorn combo, real comfort and genuine corner carving chops, that's literally the sport touring gospel right there. The FJ1200 didn't just play in that sandbox, it probably built the sandbox. Oh, and here's a fun little nugget for you. The original FJ kept its alternator tucked away behind the cylinders, not hanging off the end of the crank like everybody else was doing. Why in the world does that matter? Simple. It let them make a narrower engine, which meant a narrower bike, which meant better handling, all without giving up that big, reassuring 1188cc 4-cylinder wallop. It's the kind of clever, you'd never notice unless you're a nerd about it engineering that just makes you smile once you know it's there, and then you can't unnotice it. Fast forward to the early 2000s, the FJ gets shown the door, replaced by the FJR 1300, which goes on to become its own kind of legend. But here's the rub. Lately, though, the FJR had a rough go of it. Europe said goodbye, then Japan, eventually the US dealerships emptied out too, with just a few leftovers dribbling through Canada. For a minute there, it really seemed like Yamaha was just letting the whole sport touring line fade to black, quietly nudging everyone toward the Tracer 9 instead. So why then, at this exact moment in history, do they dig the FJ1200 nameplate out of the grave? I mean, think about it for a sec. The hardcore touring crowd, the folks who actually stack 30,000 miles a year on these machines, they never really clicked with the Tracer's more adventure-style vibe. They wanted something closer to the old formula. Big, enveloping fairing, seating that's upright but still feels sporty, enough grunt to make passing a semi on a 2-lane highway feel like nothing at all, and rock-solid reliability, the kind that lets you head off into 3 states with 0 cell service and not break a sweat. Alright, let's talk hardware, because the spec sheet for this 2026 model, it's pretty telling. We're looking at a liquid-cooled inline-4 displacing 1197 cc's, which, come on, that's almost a little wink at the original's 1188, isn't it? Yamaha's talking something like 145 horsepower bolted to a 6-speed gearbox and chain final drive, staying true to the FJ's DNA rather than chasing the shaft drive crowd like some of its touring rivals. Quick gut check though, are you the kind of rider who obsesses over peak horsepower bragging rights, or are you more about how a bike feels at 7/10 on a deserted back road when it's just you and the pavement? Because this bike, it feels built for the second type, and I reckon that's exactly the right move. But the chassis, that's where things get genuinely spicy. Yamaha stuck with that twin-spar aluminum frame philosophy that gave the original such poise, but then they threw fully adjustable suspension at both ends, something the 80s version could only dream about in its wildest fantasies. Up front, inverted forks with adjustable preload, compression, rebound, the works. Out back, a single shock with similar trickery. Braking, dual front discs gripped by radial mount calipers with ABS standard, which almost sounds silly to even mention until you remember the original only offered ABS as a pricey option in its final years, and even then it wasn't available everywhere. Now here's a little pattern interrupt for you. Remember that clever alternator placement I mentioned earlier? The little engineering secret that made the original so special? Well, Yamaha clearly remembers too, because the new model carries that same ethos forward with a narrower engine layout designed to centralize mass and keep the seating position workable for riders who aren't all 6'4" NBA rejects. Funny how some things come full circle like that, huh? Tech-wise, they've stuffed this thing with a 6-axis IMU, which means lean-sensitive traction control and cornering ABS are standard, not hidden behind some eye-watering premium package. There's a full-color TFT dash that links to your phone, multiple ride modes, cruise control, and heated grips included out of the box. Because let's be real, if you're building a touring bike in 2026, heated grips aren't a luxury line item, they should just be there. Styling, though, this is where Yamaha had to tightrope walk. Go too retro and it looks like a Halloween costume. Go too modern and you break the emotional tether to the original entirely. What they landed on is a fairing that unmistakably channels that boxy, purposeful FJ nose, but with modern LED lighting and sharper aero ducting. The tank shape, the screen angle, even the tail, it all nods to the past without feeling like you're riding a museum exhibit. So, the million-dollar question, how much? Looking at where the touring segment sits and where Yamaha's own sport touring models have historically priced themselves, figure on somewhere around 22 grand for the base setup. A higher spec version with electronically adjustable suspension, probably nudging 24. That puts it right in the crosshairs of what folks are already dropping on premium sport touring machines, which tells you Yamaha isn't trying to undercut anybody. They're trying to redefine the whole segment. And look, I get it if you're sitting there thinking, man, this sounds incredible, almost too clean, too perfectly timed, too good a comeback story. And honestly, you're not wrong to be skeptical, because here's the twist that absolutely no one saw coming. The 2026 Yamaha FJ1200 doesn't exist. Not yet, anyway. Everything I just walked you through, the specs, the pricing, the styling, the intent, it's a concept build, a vision of what this bike could realistically look like if Yamaha pulled the trigger the right way. There's been chatter online, speculative pieces, even some AI-generated clickbait swirling around claiming it's real, but as of right now, crickets from Yamaha, no official announcement. What is real, though, is the FJR 1300's uncertain future in the US, and that very legitimate, very gaping hole in Yamaha's lineup, the kind of hole that's practically screaming for exactly this bike. So this whole video was a thought experiment, built on real history, real engineering ethos, real market gaps, just presented as if Yamaha had already pulled the trigger. If the folks in Japan are listening, the blueprint's right here. And if you're curious to see another bike I've put through this same kind of deep dive treatment, go ahead and click the video floating on your screen right now. Reckon you'll dig that one just as much.